Yeah. Okay. Good deal. Sorry, I've started it up. All right, this is Clay Mobley with Mobley Motorsport Rolling Start Podcast. We've got Dr. Topher Everett on, a fellow racing driver. He's obviously in much higher series than I've been affiliated with, but I'm thankful that he's coming on. Let Topher introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks. I got my intro into motorsports just doing some autocross stuff, and then have worked my way up the ladder. Some intro series, did SCCA, Spec Miata for a while. Started with track day in a Subaru. It's really where it all began.
Really?
And then got my racing license at Skip Barber
Yeah.
at Road Atlanta in 2011, and then it just kind of took off from there.
And in 2000, A, you started out tracking a Subaru. I'm interested to hear about that. B, was Skip Barber, were they using the Mustangs in 2011?
They were using the open wheel cars at
Okay.
that time.
Okay.
And that was a good experience. It's, they're not teaching you so much about racing and car handling as they are just being safe and fundamentals of, how a race weekend goes, what are the flags, how to be safe out there more than anything.
Yeah, no, that's always interesting. I got more into racing through amateur endurance leagues, right? Like Champ and AER, WRL. And I never actually went to a legit school for it. So it's always interesting. I think I went like maybe it's something I'll go back and do now. Um, I've got my license through HSR. We've had some successful HSR outings. We'll be doing HSR and SVRA this year. So I don't know. I've considered going to the Porsche school out at Barber. Maybe that's something you entertain since you do Porsche Sprint, right?
Lots of lay people who don't race have asked me if I've gone to the school because I was in Athens, just down the road from Atlanta, and lots of people ask me about that. I've never done it. I don't know how much it would add to where I am in my motorsport development at this point. One school that I've always been really interested in would be to do the AMG ice driving school.
Yeah.
Up in the Arctic Circle, because I think getting on a low grip surface with a high horsepower car, number one, it'd be a ton of fun and just a cool trip.
Yeah.
But in terms of car control and just to experience something very different in motorsports, and they have these world champion rally drivers there, your instructors, and you haul around this frozen lake with an AMG with studded tires. That just sounds like a blast.
Yeah,
so that's definitely on my radar.
Have you seen Dirtfish? I think it's up in Seattle.
Yeah, there's one in Florida
really?
too, and that one's been on my list for a little bit too, is to get out onto a low grip surface and do some rotation. Something interesting that we did, and the Autometrics guys, the team that I run regularly with and Porsche Club put together, we went out to the Michelin Proving Ground in South Carolina.
Okay.
And they've got an amazing facility out there, and we went out there for the day and did a bunch of different techniques with their tire tester guys who are phenomenal drivers and great car handlers, because that's what they do for a living. They've got to be able to test one tire against another and be able to say, well, this one can do this at the limit, this one can do this at the limit, and have these very small margins of which they can differentiate the performance of the tire. So they're very good drivers and very analytical in terms of how they think about driving.
Yeah.
And we did autocross with them, but the funnest thing that we did out there, and they had different cars that we set up so that you do a front wheel drive car and a rear wheel drive car, and they put good tires on it, bad tires on it, and then you get on the skid pad and do all this stuff. It was just a really fun experience for car control.
Yep.
But they've got a giant skid pad out there, and learning how to drift around that skid pad when they let it down, you get to like 48 miles an hour and the car starts to get sideways, and you try to hold that slide all the way around. That was a really useful experience to me. And one of my teammates said after he came back after that event, he was so much more comfortable getting the car to and over the limit of grip. And that's something early on in my motorsport career I wish I had invested more in, is go do some low grip things. Because for me, that was the trajectory. That was the light bulb moment for me, from going to just a mid-pack, can drive the line but not really competitive from the racing standpoint, to I'm up front now, is that ability to be able to get the car onto the edge of grip and keep it there. And that feel for some people, I think some people just like some athletes are inherently born with that talent, and they're aliens. I don't know how they get it,
Yep.
but the rest of us have to work hard at it. And I get into motorsports pretty late in life, and I did not have that skill set. But I think doing those type of events, going to do some low grip surface things and getting comfortable with the rotation of the car
Yep.
and being able to get the car to point and how to get the car to step over that line of grip and get the car back underneath you. Once you get that skill down and that feel, it just opens up so many windows for you in terms of racing performance, I think.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you bring that up because I was definitely going to ask at what point in your career or what skill did you develop that allowed you to run up front and allowed you to really get that confidence to jump up front, right? Um, I think for me, it's always come by trial and error, specifically at Road Atlanta in turn seven. That's one area where I know that no matter what car I'm in, I'll figure out the limit because I'll either tail whip around or I'll stay on it, right? But I think that's something even in the sim is what I tell people is this idea of your in my mind, an amateur person will go out and want to dance on the limit, but never go over it. It's important that you go over it because that's where you find it. And ultimately, mitigating a crash or a loss of control, you have to know where it is and where you can bring it back, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you have to have that. You have to be able to step over that line gently and have consequence without calamity,
Of
right?
course.
And so I think there were a couple of points in my motorsport career that if I was giving advice to someone getting into a motorsports would be number one, professional coaching.
Yep.
That's the best money you can spend in racing is even the pros have coaches.
Yeah.
So getting someone who is really good at it, but also knows how to communicate to you, okay, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is what you're supposed to be feeling. When I started inspecting the auto in the SCCA, there were so many fast guys, and I would have them watch video and look at data and listen to them talk. And it was always, well, you need to go faster. Well, you need to go fast. Yeah, but how do I do that?
Yeah.
How do I do that without the car flying into the barriers? And it took a while and a lot of professional coaching for me to understand what feeling I'm supposed to be getting in the car when you get it to the limit of grip.
Yep.
And when you exceed that a little bit, what's the car going to do and how are you going to respond to that?
Yep.
And I think I'm at my absolute best driving when I feel absolutely in tune with the car and it's a complete feeling thing. The car almost feels like it's part of you when you're driving. And developing that skill takes a lot of seat time for a lot of people who are just not naturals at it. Good coaching really helps, and getting out and playing on low grip surfaces where you can exceed that limit of grip and,
Yep.
and get the car rotating and figure out how to catch it and have fast hands in a situation that is a lot less risky than turn one at Road Atlanta, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely agree. So back to your first track day in the Subaru. What Subaru was this? Hopefully, it was something cool like an Outback. Uh, and then, how long did you spend in the Subaru before you bit the bullet and maybe started renting or bought a legitimate caged track focus race car?
Yeah, it was a 2007 Subaru STI,
Okay.
and I was in my general surgery residency, so I was an adult. I always wanted to do something race oriented when I was a kid. Always
Yep.
wanted a go kart, but never had the financial resources to do that. I had a good friend of mine that did, I think, some BMW club racing um, when he was older until he injured his back, and to me, that was like the pinnacle. I mean, I could still visualize that Pirelli hat with the gold leaf on it. I mean,
Of course.
I wanted one of those hats, so or maybe it was Goodyear, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was enamored with that as a kid. So I always wanted to go racing, but never had the opportunity until I
Yeah.
was an adult. And I bought that car and started doing autocrossing in the SCCA, which is a great place to get kind of the racing feel in a low risk environment. You're just going around cones for fastest time. So it gives you a little bit of that feel, but it's still not wheel to wheel racing on a track. So I
Yep.
started doing some track days. And, the first time you go off track in your daily driver, you
Yeah.
realize, maybe I should
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. Maybe I should I should get a dedicated race car. And I had some colleagues at the hospital that I worked at that I knew raced, and had conversations with them, and they said, you got to get a spec Miata. The cars are inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
They handle great. It's a great teaching tool. And they kind of steered me in the right direction. I rented for a while, and that was a good option. I would just show up and go.
Yep.
But I got to the point where every weekend I would show up, I would have to set the car back up. Like, the seat wasn't right, and the driving, the position wasn't right for me, and I wasn't getting the best tires. And so I rented for a few years, and tooled around with the back, hired a coach, got better, was starting to be competitive. And that was the point where I was exceeding the performance of the rental car. And then it was time to jump out. My coach started his own team, had a car built, was competitive in some regional races for a while. And then the bug to jump to a car with a bit more performance, kind of bit me, and that's when I jumped from the Miata over to Porsche Club. Started in a Boxster, raced that for a while, won the championship in it. Jumped to a Cayman, ran the Cayman for a bit, and jumped up to a Club Sport, won the championship bit, and now I'm all the way up to a 992 Cup car. And that, for me, getting into Porsche Club, that was always the pinnacle. That was always my goal when I got into Porsche Club. Was when I first got into it, and I was racing the Boxster, we would call the Cup car guys, we would call them the Cup car guy a-holes. Number one, because we were a little bit envious of them driving the baddest cars out there, but also because some of them weren't the friendliest on track, just slower cars. And now I'm an official Cup car a-hole. So it's taken me, 10 years to get there, but I think I've done the ladder and learned the skills along the way to be able to compete at that level.
Yeah, you earned the stripes, no doubt.
Yeah.
Take us back to the Boxster days, and at what did you start out that year knowing or feeling like you had the championship? What was the progression into winning the championship, and then sort of your mindset afterwards?
It took a while to get used to the dynamics of that car, because it was a big step up in performance from the Miata.
Yeah.
So just the power in general was different. And it being a rear engine car with an open diff and that set, learning how to drive that car was challenging. When we were on the stock shocks, they switched over to the Bilsteins, which just calmed the dynamics of the car down a little bit. But that taught me how to drive more than anything, because that car had a tendency, when you turned it in, it would over rotate, and you'd have to catch it with throttle. And then from the mid apex out, you would get this understeer where the car would just push. So it's the exact opposite of how you want a car really to handle well. But that being able to pitch the car in and catch it with throttle, pitch the car in and catch it with throttle. Once I got good at that, man, it was game on. I could get the car to the limit. And it wasn't right away. It took a couple of years and a lot of coaching and a lot of laps to be competitive in that.
Yeah. No, that's understandable. That was one thing I was going to ask is the balance of the car between a Boxster, Cayman, Club Sport, and the 992, right? Because, everybody sees the Porsche, but they don't realize that the engine is balanced in different areas depending on whether you're in the Cayman chassis or really a Cup chassis. So mindset difference there when you're driving.
Yeah, very much so. The jump from the Boxster to the Cayman was a little easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yep.
I haven't. The disclaimer is this will be my first season in the 992s, and I've only done one day in it, so I really can't really compare to that chassis yet. But the Cayman is such a phenomenal platform as a turnkey race car for the amount of performance that you get, the build quality, reliability. And it's the type of car that you can jump in and you can be really quick right away, because the car's dynamics are such that it communicates very well. And if you do something wrong, get over the edge, it taps you on the shoulder, says, hey, don't do that. It doesn't just, nut punch you.
Yep.
So it's very forgiving. And the traction control and the ABS in the car are very good. So if someone's coming into Porsche Club and doesn't have a lot of racing experience and has the budget, you cannot go wrong with a Club Sport. It's a phenomenal car, just as a turnkey. Get in it, go, and be quick right away.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that there's a learning curve between being quick right away and running at the top of the field.
Sure, there is. Even in Porsche Club, I
Yeah.
mean, there's the talent depth in Porsche Club is not as deep as it was in the Spec Miata. The Spec Miata, I mean, they had 100 and something odd guys show up to nationals.
Yep.
You know, they had to split the field in two just for qualifying. There's so many guys, and probably the top 25 guys could win that win that race and that championship any day of the week. And
Yep.
Porsche, because there are more models, there are more classes, it's spread out a little bit more. The talent pool is diluted a little bit across different classes. So instead of having, 25 guys that are top tier like you would expect Miata, you've got maybe 5 guys that are top tier in Porsche Club in any given class.
I see.
But for the club sport, you can get to 95% of the car performance, I think, very easily. That last 5%, that's where it gets interesting, and that's where the experience and the coaching and the seat time really help you develop that last 5%. But being able to hop in a car and be really fast right away and have the car respond to you and not do, very, very predictable dynamics, and it to be very forgiving more than anything when you step over that line, I think that inspires a lot of confidence in a lot of drivers at that level.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. So when I met you, I believe we were at Sebring for the first 24-hour race, and it was in WRL, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you were with Hammer at the time in a TCR.
That's right.
So your mindset between endurance racing and sprint, especially with the TCR being a front-wheel drive car, what's the difference there? How do you approach it?
I love endurance racing. I particularly like endurance racing at night as my absolute
Yeah.
favorite. There's just something about running the cars at night where you're you're just so much more focused, and it just seems to be a bit more. There's more purity to it
Mm.
in terms of hitting your marks. That your visual field in depth is shorter. So that's my all-time favorite. And endurance racing, I think, gives you the opportunity to you don't have to drive the car at an absolute knife edge all the time like you do in sprint racing.
Yep.
And that can be really fun and more relaxing at times.
Mm-hmm.
There's also in endurance racing, there are a lot more emotional highs and lows that you go through, I think, in the course of an endurance race that you don't experience in a sprint because there's so many other things that are out of your control. All I can focus on is the stint or the 2 stints that I'm in the car.
Yep.
But, when you're sitting on the pit box and you get a penalty or something, or your teammate makes a good pass, you're in it, from the emotional standpoint.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the actual driving dynamics, you're trying to take care of the car. Most importantly, you're trying to stay on track, not break things, and not hit stuff. Managing traffic is 99% of the battle in endurance racing. If you do those things, you're going to put yourself in a position to win. And if you look at the raw lap times, it's very rarely ever the fastest outright car on any level of pace that wins endurance races. And that to me is pretty cool. Tim, the team manager, used to harp on that all the time. He was like, look, I don't care how fast you are.
Yeah.
We're all going to be within a couple seconds of, he called it the bubble of the driver performance from the highest performing guy on the team to the lowest performing guy on the team. In those races, we'd have 3 to 4 drivers. He said, you don't need to go out and set lap records. And that's better because I always like having a real fast kid in the car.
Yeah.
Because then I'm not feeling like I have to, blister it and put the car on the edge. I know I can run, at a 95% pace, and I can do it all day long.
Yeah.
So that mindset's definitely a little bit different. But it's those emotional highs and lows in maybe the I guess chaos. I'm not sure what the right word is for it, but all of the other variables that come in endurance racing that are not in sprint racing.
Yeah, I think endurance racing. I think endurance racing weeds out those who are performative and those who aren't. If you're going to go to even an 8-hour race, in my opinion, I think usually WRL is like 8 hour Sunday or 8 hour Saturday, 8 hour Sunday, or some variation of that. And Um, it's no small feat to enter even an 8 hour race and have the logistics to come out with a podium, right? And so you can't go into that half ass. You've got to be, the team has to be cohesive and full bore ahead, right? And I think that's what I enjoy about. I've loved the chances that I've got to do sprint racing. It's definitely a different mindset, especially because my first races were all endurance. But I look forward to going back and taking the C46 I'm building and doing some enduros with it, just because to me that's my favorite form of motorsport.
Yeah, there's something about that camaraderie, and you also have to compromise a little bit of a driver as a driver because I'm a smaller guy. It was very rare that I ever got teamed up with teammates that are my size. So the
Mm,
seating position's never exactly right. Sometimes you're moving around in the car a little bit because you're not padded well in there, but you kind of get used to being thrown around a little bit, and
yeah,
maybe your teammate before you burn the tires off, or you went out in qualifying with it was low fuel and the car handled great, and then you fill the car up with fuel on older tires and things
yep,
a dog, and you're having to learn how to drive around an understeer situation. There's just so many more variables
yeah.
to endurance racing, and it is hard to win those races. WRL is very competitive,
It is.
and the team structure, and the organization of the pit crew, you can't go out there and pull your car off the trailer as a single guy and
Yep.
go run for 30 minutes and smoke some laps and win those. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
It is a very pure form of motorsports in that regard, and that is absolutely a team sport.
Yeah. Especially now, I mean, used to be a GP3, you might could approach it in that sort of run what you brung mindset. GP3 doesn't exist anymore. I mean, GP1 cars are, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to show up and do well in an M2 CSR in GP1, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's only growing. Do you have any plans for WRL in 2026?
Not on my calendar right now. I'm going to
Okay.
focus mostly on Porsche Club. I would love to win the championship in the 992. I think it's probably going to take me a couple seasons to get a handle on that car. I don't want to put too much pressure on myself
Yeah.
and overdrive the car too early. I've always thought, one thing that I'm passionate about is bringing non-motorsports fans into it. It's cool to share video links and have your buddies log in and watch you go run around, but they it's that's like, here's this wonderful steak and I made it, and let's cook it and eat it,
Yeah.
but you're just going to smell it, right? Or you're just going to look at it. I want to bring them into it.
Yeah.
I want to go do a champ car race and buy a car or have someone put together a car and invite three of my buddies who've never been before who watch me race. Like, let's go bomb around for the weekend so you guys can see what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. In this car that I'm building right now, I bought two Sawbelt Tauruses, matching, and one of my friends said, "Well, why'd you buy a passenger seat?" And I'm like, because if I'm at the track and I'm not racing, I'm gonna have a passenger in there and getting their reaction and sign the waiver. You can hop in and drive, right?
Yep.
I'm all for bringing people into motorsport and at least letting them see what it feels like, right? Because the way I got into motorsport was showing up at the track with my helmet, and every now and then I got to ride along. And once I got into college, I found a team. I started. That's when we met, right? So found a team. I started working for them, and I would swap off seat time for working on the weekends, right? So um, I'm all for that. I think especially in Champ Car, it's fun to show up and just have a good time. The pressure isn't there like it is in these other forms that we're racing. You've also mentioned HSR, which is my favorite series that I've run in. I like to say it feels like a celebration of motorsport. The team that I drove with in the past, and I think they'll take care of my E46 as well, Denton Cardin Racing, they're running some 992s. Um, and, they've had a really ball of a time, right? Do you plan on running your Porsches in HSR at all?
Yeah, I think I want to get into some of those events because the Autometrics team has done some of those. One of my teammates, Larry Wexler, did the Daytona Classic, and he loved it and talked
Yep.
about how well organized it is, because it's affiliated or owned by IMSA, and they know how to run a
Yeah.
motorsport weekend. It just has a much more professional feel to it. And he said you get a ton of track time. It's very cost effective, and he just loved the just the ambiance and the spirit decor of the people who were doing it. He said it was a really cool event. So
Yeah.
that's definitely on my radar for 2026.
Yeah, definitely. And check out the MIDI as well. I would say that's probably their biggest event.
Yeah.
You know, somewhere to 30 to 50,000 spectators throughout the weekend. Um, I mean, there's always hundreds of entries. And I think the cool thing about it is, you know, when I was doing HSR in the past, I was in an E30, and I could go out in my E30 with the older BMWs and Porsches and come in and then see, you know, Will Turner or Vin Barletta out there in their Z3 GT3 from back in the day, right? And I don't know anywhere else you can see that. So um, I know the Classic 24 is on my list this year. Probably do the MIDI, probably do Fall Historics at Road Atlanta, and then their Sebring race at the end of the year as well. I'm really looking forward to that. Uh, Going on to our next segment, I guess we could call it, is running through gear. I think you know you mentioned this as well. Gear is something that, as a new driver, you don't quite know what is homologated for your series that you're looking for, or what's really going to fit the best, last the longest, be cost effective, right? Is that how have you approached that in the past, and how do you approach it going forward with the experience you have now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a self-professed gear junkie. I mean, any sport or hobby I get into, I do pretty deep dives
Yeah,
into the gear, no matter what it is. And there are a lot of you can get reviews of just about anything these days, but it seems like throughout the paddock when I started, there was not a lot of good informational sources out there about how to race suits fit, or helmets or gloves or shoes. And so for me, it's been just trial and error through the now 15 or 16 years I've been going through motorsport, trying different brands, trying stuff on when I go to the track, um, going up to discovery parts and trying stuff on. I think helmet fit is a tough one for people because everyone's head's a little bit different shape,
yep,
and you just have to put some on. So when you go to the track and they're supported by um, whoever the motorsport vendor is,
yeah,
go and try on several helmets and see what fits you and where the pressure's right and where the pressure's not right.
yep,
The Hans devices were weird for a while because you had the classic, yoke style, and then the Simpson device came out, and I thought, oh, that yoke thing, I don't know if I like to be around my neck. And I tried the Simpson device, but it was too clunky with all the straps and all this stuff. So over time, I think the market kind of sorts a little bit of that stuff out. But
yep,
me, I mean, it's just trial and error. One thing I found this year that I really like is the Stan's 21 shoes. So a lot of racing shoes are super thin on the bottom,
yeah,
which is great for pedal feel, but so few of us are actually driving three pedal cars anymore that you don't need that real thinness. And they're not comfortable to walk around the paddock. I've had plantar fasciitis. I'm an older guy, so joints bother me and things like that.
yep.
Stan 21 shoes feel like a regular tennis shoe. So again, just
Interesting.
playing with some different manufacturers and things has helped kind of guide me. I wish there was a blog, or I actually did a website and made some videos for a while, but it didn't seem to be very popular in terms of doing gear reviews and things like that. So
Yeah,
asking people who've been in the sport for a while, who are racing, other people in the paddock, like, hey, let me try those gloves on, or what shoes do you like, or
yep,
what do you like about that Hans device, or have you tried the Simpson thing, or what suit do you like? A lot of it comes down to budget, unfortunately, and that's where
yep,
the race shops can help point you. Okay, here's the low range, entry level budget stuff, and here's a package that kind of fits your budget. Here's the kind of mid range stuff, and then if money's no object, here's kind of the high end stuff that you
yep.
look at. So that drives it more than anything, I think. But yeah, just trial and error, and talking to people and trying stuff more than anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, for me, I've got a massive head. And so you could probably put my helmet on and spin it around. For that, I went on and tried, a few different brands. All the cool kids wear Stilo. I just felt like the Bell fit me better. And I think this next season I'll upgrade to a carbon bell. But like you mentioned, those pressure spots, and you know the cool thing about Ron, the Zappendorfs at Discovery Parts, is they'll let you just sit there, walk around, spend 30 minutes wearing the helmet. Um, Maybe even take it home, wear it while you're sim racing one night, and just see where are those pressure points. Because if you're in an endurance race, or I mean, hell, if you're in a 45-minute sprint race, um, you're gonna feel it, right? You're gonna feel it. It's gonna be sore, and you're gonna get sick of wearing it. So that definitely makes sense. I've always, as far as my Nomex gear, I've always, you know, I've been a fan of Sawbelt. Um, I feel like the Sawbelt
Same.
suits fit me better in the torso area. I'm built like a tree stump, so anytime, I feel like the OMPs sort of, those are for, taller, lankier folks, right?
Yeah, some
So
have that kind of European driver cut, tall, thin guys. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. It's always one thing. Like you said, there's a lot of budget focus when it gets into gear, and I think newer drivers, especially, or someone who is doing it, um, as a track day event, uh, they they're going to want to buy something that just barely fits their budget. But I would really urge people to go and test out a few different brands, see what you like, see what fits you the best, and ultimately see what's going to be safest, right? I think due to your profession, safety is a big deal, right? Do you care to dive into that and some sort of metrics that you guide yourself on race weekends? I think you probably look at safety a bit different than most of us.
Yeah, I was a general surgeon before I became a vascular surgeon, and we did a fair amount of trauma training throughout that. So you get to experience what happens when things go really wrong for people. One
Hmm.
of my very good friends, John Butler's an ER physician who is trauma trained, and he is the um, medical director of Road Atlanta.
Okay.
And he and I have conversations about safety quite a bit. And I don't know if a lot of people understand this, but many tracks, their medical personnel is some physician that they pay for the weekend. And that physician may or may not have experience with motorsport,
Yep.
and they may or may not have experience taking care of people with traumatic injuries in motorsports in particular. It might be the family practice doctor down the road.
Yep.
And that's the unfortunate part about this sport, is that there are serious consequences sometimes when things go wrong.
Of course.
And it seems like at the amateur club level racing, and sometimes even up at the professional levels, there has not been nearly as much focused on safety as there should be. Watch a couple documentaries, Yellow, about the IndyCar Comaltro safety team is a phenomenal one. And I can't remember the name of the one about Formula One and Dr. Sid Watkins, but you watch that one, and it seems like a lot of amateur racing is in the pre-Sid Watkins arena era, in terms of the lack of safety things that the tracks and sometimes the series, but more the tracks are willing to invest in. I mean, I have this idea that there probably shouldn't be any concrete walls anywhere around a racetrack these days. We should be having safer barriers or Armco, but that stuff's expensive. I mean, it's hundreds of dollars per linear foot, right?
Yep.
And tracks work on pretty thin margins, even big popular tracks. So it's difficult for them to invest in the money for those things unless there's a lot of pushback.
Hmm.
And oftentimes there's not until there's a big event. You get a smaller tracks like a Summit Point or Roebling Road, man, take a minute and walk around those tracks well off the track surface. There's a lot of trees. Man, that getting off course and getting into the trees is not something that a driver ever wants to experience. So
Yeah.
there's some track design things that probably come into that. There's some, medical personnel, hiring physicians that know motorsport and that specifically know trauma and motorsport trauma.
Yep.
That's something that my friend John Butler is really passionate about and working hard to change. And I've been on the kind of outskirts cheerleading him, but I'm hoping that that becomes more of a focus as motorsports becomes a little bit more accessible to the masses. I mean, this idea of, well, I like to do motorsports because the average Joe, I'm this, gladiator, and that's all I do, and I'm a professional at it, and I like the risk because that means an average Joe can't walk in and do it for the weekend. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, I don't subscribe to that mentality. I think anybody with the desire and a little bit of resources should be able to do it, and to be able to do it safely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think at all levels of motorsport there should be strict, especially at some of the track days. We go to, and maybe they will allow open passing, no point buys, etc. I think there's a few, especially Chen, that do really good about making sure that the coaches that are assisting their novices are trained, certified, and will know what to do in the event of an on track incident. Um, I personally wish that there would be more focus on in car safety. I hate and maybe I'm wrong here, but I hate seeing videos of people in street cars and they're reaching these insane speeds, and a good example is like at Roebling. I mean, I've seen so many people just go off straight at one instead of turning, and like you said, there's trees there at the end of it. Um, I think you know I don't know the answer there. Maybe it's if your car is going to hit a certain speed or carry a certain amount of G's laterally, that there's at least got to be a half cage or structural support at the struts in the front and rear. I don't know the answer there, but I think as your average car gets faster, I mean, end of the day, you can go get a Honda Accord right now with as much horsepower as a E46 M3, right? So um, as the cars get faster, I think there's got to be something. I hate to be uh, a killjoy, but I think there's got to be something that enables a bit more of a safer experience, because it's not just you on track. There's people around you, and it's what you're saying there at the ladder end. I think as a driver climbs the ladder from track day to if they can make it to a pro league, the safety's got to start there at the track day, right? It's got to start with your mindset, with coaching, and not just coaching on how to get faster, but quite literally how to frame yourself as you're driving wheel to wheel with people. What moves and what moves can you make, and what justifies that move as you go into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think like most sports, though, I think it starts at the top, and I think in professional motorsports, the the IMSAs and the SROs made a a a bigger attempt at reconstructing what the IndyCar field does in terms of the amount of medical staff they have and their training, and commits to that, then you might see that trickle down to and demand that the tracks make certain safety improvements as well.
Yeah.
And I think that would trickle down to the average club racer.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
hard to have a grassroots movement in that,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. I will say, I feel like I've noticed in the last 3 years that the club level endurance series are being more strict on the no contact, right?
Yeah.
And the like I was saying earlier, that process of thought and what goes into a driver's decision to make certain moves. Um, it just seems like I see more and more that the reviews of certain series are going up. They're getting closer to that 4 or 5 star review because people are having a better time, and to me, that better time starts with safety. So uh, I'm glad. I'm glad we've got people like you with your background who are focused on it and championing it from the sidelines. Um, Going in, I don't want to take too much more of your time, but if you had, because you've started and you've climbed the ladder and you've won championships in the ladder, um, what are some pieces of advice to drivers getting started, whether it's spec Miata or jumping into a 992?
Yeah, if if you're not one of the 0.5% of the population that's naturally talented at getting a car to the level of grip, start with the low horsepower car that has good handling and good grip,
Hmm.
and hire a coach. Sign up for every endurance race you can, because that's the least expensive seat time you're gonna get. And because of the nature of endurance racing, the pressure is less to get the car immediately to the edge and hold it there right away. And it gives you time to work up to those skill sets, and to be able to do that. There's no shortcuts. You have to
Yep.
put the work in, and that work is seat time, and seat time's expensive. It's
Yep.
going to cost you in tires. It's going to cost you in fuel. It's going to cost you in travel. But that's the sport. That's what you're signing up for. Um, get a coach. Get in with a robust team. Don't feel the pressure to buy a car right away,
Yep.
because there's so many great arrive and drive opportunities to start out in. And if you get in with a good team and have a good coach, you start building on that foundation. And once that light bulb moment goes off for you as a driver, for me, it's about the feeling of the car and being in touch with the car and feeling like I can rotate the car and catch it and get the car to the limit of grip right away. Once that moment unlocks for you, then you can start, marching up as high up the ladder as you want to go based on your own budget. But you
Hmm.
got to put the work in.
Yeah.
And um, along the way, I think one of the things that I've appreciated about motorsports now that I didn't appreciate as much about it when I first got in, the camaraderie and the friendships now to me are just as important.
Yep.
Hanging out with the people that I want to see and enjoy being around at the track, and there's really no other place I'd rather spend a weekend, whether I'm in the car or out of it. Enjoying that component of it and getting in with the right group of people makes a world of difference, no matter where you are in your motorsport journey.
Yeah, I completely agree with that there at the end. For me, I realized like majority of people at the track are there. No, majority of people are there without the intent to go pro. They're there to have a good time, right? And so that is a big factor for me because um, I'm 28. I'm young in my career. I'm sacrificing a lot to be able to do motorsport, as a lot of people are, and for that, nobody wants to show up and have a bad time or only be super competitive. And I feel the same way. I mean, with the team I run with and the guys that are there, most of them are a bit older than me, and I see them as sort of friends slash mentors, and I couldn't be more thankful for them. Um, you know, there's to me there's nothing like the camaraderie that I have with the competitors and friends on track. So agreed with you.
It's a passion for those of us that get into it. It's hard to explain to the outsider. And what was that quote? Racing is life. It's
Yep.
everything else is just waiting. And
Yeah.
when you share that with other like-minded people and friends, it's so rewarding.
Yeah. Of course. No, I completely agree, and that part of explaining it to people. My mom, so she does not want me there on track. But I think knowing that people like you and Dr. Tally and the other people that she's come out and met, knowing that you guys do it and see it as somewhat safe or safe enough to take the risk, it helps explain it, right? So,
Yeah. At some point, for from the outside looking in, this sport is ridiculous. The amount of time that we spend doing it, thinking about it, you know, sim racing, track lap analysis, coaching.
Yep.
It's ludicrous just from the time investment standpoint, and then from the financial perspective, it's, you know, just if you want to know what it's like racing at the highest level, just take every dollar you can put your hands on, put it in a trash can, and go outside and set it on
Of
fire.
course.
Now, do it again every weekend. You
Yeah.
know, that's so from that standpoint, it's ludicrous. And then, you know, like you said, but the risks involved. I mean, there are consequences of this sport that you don't really appreciate in other sports, but that's also part of the draw, is that precision and that small margin of error for mistakes. So from the outside looking in, the sport is completely ridiculous, but
Yep.
once you're into it, there's nothing else that gives you that same feeling, and be able to share that feeling with other people and hang out with other like-minded people and share that stoke with. It's hard to recreate that in any other setting in my experience.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Is there anything else you want to touch on? I know I've asked a lot of questions, and I really appreciate your time. But if you got anything else you want to say, or just touch on, before we close out.
No, I think the podcast is a phenomenal idea. It's so user friendly, and it's a great resource to be able to reach out to drivers. Our culture has so many nooks and crannies, and is so varied, and it's the same with motorsport. Um, but what you wind up finding is that there's significant overlap. Once you kind of get into it and start doing it, it feels like a fairly small playground, so to speak. So
Yep.
it's fun to see what people are interested in terms of their series, what cars they're passionate
Of
about,
course.
what things they like to race, at all budget levels, at all experience levels. And the podcast, I think, is a great way to reach out and put people in touch, and just be a good resource for people who are interested in doing it, or been doing it a while, want to get
Yep.
into something else, or want to learn about a different series. Or so I commend you on putting this thing together, and I'm honored and flattered that I got invited tonight.
No, yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think, it is time consuming. There's a lot that goes into it. But I just wanted to be able to have a platform where, uh, you know, if you pull your head out of the sand and you look around, you realize that we've got such a big network, and we've got a lot of great friends, a lot of great competitors, a lot of great team owners that have made this their life, is to race. Like, at the end of the day, it's to race. And I think that deserves a little bit of a show, a little bit of respect. And I wanted to have an outlet for people to get on and share that passion, right? So I appreciate you saying that. We'd love to have you back on after you get, a few 992 races under your belt, and see what you think about that car, because it is a beast. Um, I think that's going to be pretty insane to hear about. So
Yeah, it's been my motorsport goal for a long time, and my thought is that if you can drive that car well, you can pretty well jump into anything and be quick at it. So I'm excited. Autometrics is a great team. I'm looking forward to running with those guys
yeah,
and getting to know that car a little bit.
yeah, sir.